Good evening. I'm Erica Sargent coming to you with breaking news in Chicago. We are getting reports of multiple people shot at 63rd and King Drive, particularly in the 6300 block of King Drive. We are learning new information at this hour from Chicago Fire and Chicago Police. First to Chicago Police. They are reporting multiple people shot. This is in the 3rd Police District. No details as to the condition of those individuals, but CFD is reporting that at least one person who was hit, possibly a teenager, was taken to the hospital in critical but stable condition. CFD confirming that an ambulance was actually responding to a separate incident, a patient with shortness of breath. We do have Chopper 2 over that scene as it is very active right now. Let me show you a view of that. Chopper 2 above what they're calling the Parkway Gardens. This is a private housing complex. Again, CFD telling us that an ambulance was responding to a patient with shortness of breath, and once out there on the scene, there were reports of shots fired. Another ambulance came to the scene and took a male in his 20s from that 6300 block of King Drive to the University of Chicago in critical but stable condition. No one, CFD says, from the ambulance was injured, but we are hearing other reports from the scanner, from CPD, talking about multiple people shot, potentially as many as 5. So as we get more information as to how many people may have those wounds, we'll bring that to you. Now, as we were hearing about this ambulance that was on the scene initially responding to reports of someone with shortness of breath, we were hearing from emergency calls that that ambulance was surrounded by people. The techs on the scene in that ambulance, they were hearing reports of gunfire, and they called that in, potentially banging on the side of the ambulance. We're working to confirm exactly the timing of that and if in any way that ambulance was hit from gunfire. CFD is telling us that an ambulance number 14 was removed from the scene and is being inspected, but they don't have any details yet as to the circumstances of whether that ambulance was surrounded by the crowd, is what we're hearing, or sustained any damage from gunfire. But again, this happening in the 63rd block, 6300 block of King Drive. We know this is Parkway Gardens, and from Chopper 2 you can see that they have part of that scene taped off. We've seen multiple police cars on the scene, and at some point some of the lights were flashing there. You can see a parking lot area, and part of a sidewalk in between some of the housing units is blocked off. We don't know at this point if they're actively searching for a gunman or multiple people who could have guns out there, but we do have reports of a shooting out there with police saying multiple people were shot. Now, Chopper 2 has been assessing this scene for the last few minutes, and we've turned and we've been able to see that this is a housing complex with multiple towers. You can tell that there's buildings that probably have 7 or 8 floors, and it looks like we're seeing an officer walking inside that parking area, potentially a courtyard in the center between these multiple towers. And it looks like that crime scene tape is sectioning off multiple areas here, to the right, to the top of your screen, and to the left, just out of the scene there. So as we learn more information about exactly how many people shot, we will bring that to you. But CPD actually tweeting out that they're getting reports of multiple people shot. As Chopper 2 has now veered over to the right, you can see it's a very large scene, not only inside where those parking spaces were, but outside of those initial units. You can see that police cars are in the street, multiple officers investigating. It looks like there are some orange cones there that are sectioning off part of that area, and doesn't look like any traffic is getting through at this point. The victim that we know of so far, according to CFD, the fire department, they're saying that they have confirmation of at least one person, a man in his 20s, that is now at U of C in critical condition but stable at this point. They were unable to confirm whether there were any additional people that were transported separately. We were hearing that there was one person shot, but potentially others who may have other wounds. We don't know the status of that initial call for the shortness of breath, but it sounds like from what we're hearing so far that it was an unrelated incident where an ambulance was responding to a patient with shortness of breath, and then the gunshots unfolded at that time. So now you can see here multiple police units lining that street. Some of that traffic still getting through to the right of your screen, but definitely crime scene tape cordoning off many sections within those Parkway Gardens on the south side, 63rd and King Drive. A huge police presence were the initial reports, and we're working to confirm exactly what happened with the text on that ambulance. The initial emergency calls were saying that they were surrounded by crowds in Parkway Gardens. There was banging on the ambulance and reports of hearing shots fired, but at least according to CFD, no one from the ambulance was injured. One of those ambulances is being inspected, has been removed from the scene. And you can tell from Chopper 2 that while there are many police cars out there, we're not seeing any ambulances, at least from this view, and not a lot of activity in this area right here. It seems like they have that blocked off now. While there are parked cars there, there doesn't seem to be a lot of movement, as if they are actively searching that particular spot. Now, it remains to be seen, of course, at this point, what the investigation entails. So we will be in touch with CPD and back in touch with the fire department to see if we can learn more information about whether they're actively looking for someone. But you can tell from the layout of Parkway Gardens, there's multiple units here, multiple towers, upwards of 8 to 10 levels here, with this central parking lot and around, surrounded by many of these buildings. We were told by CFD that the person that was taken with the gunshot wound, that was from 6330 King Drive to UFC. And as you can tell from this, it looks like this unit or this complex could potentially take up several blocks. So we were hearing the 6300 block, but also police saying that they were responding in the vicinity of the 6400 block. So definitely if you are traveling in that area, keep that in mind, that likely some of those streets will be closed as they investigate. Chopper 2 has been on the scene for just about 10 minutes, and right away we were able to tell that it was still very active, with investigators, police officers out there, and several sections of this complex blocked off with tape. So I just want to go back to what we're initially hearing, how this started. It started, we're told, with an ambulance responding to a separate incident of a patient with shortness of breath. With that ambulance on the scene, then there were multiple reports of multiple people being shot, shots fired, that coming from CPD. They're not confirming at this time how many people were actually hit, but they are confirming that there are reports of multiple